Hello, NYSOA Nation, and good evening. Welcome to our third installment of Black History Month, where we are celebrating our members and telling a little bit about their stories. So if you're not familiar with our initiative here, February is Black History Month, and it brings our attention to the unique struggles and triumphs of the Black community. At NYSOA, we're focused on being an inclusive organization and using our platform for good. And with that, we are super excited to spotlight our successful members and use this platform to help share their stories through their voices and bring us a little closer together in understanding and supporting one another. I'm very much excited about our guest today. She is a dear friend of mine and colleague, and I have had the privilege of working with Miss Natalie Simon on some significant games in my own personal career, and she has been a fabulous teammate, and I would go to battle on any game with her, and I'm super very much excited to hear her perspective today. So if you don't know Miss Natalie Simon, she is in Florida. She's been a member of NYSOA since 2015. She's a part of the Florida Sun chapter in Florida, and she was recently the Region 6 Regional Referee of the Year Award recipient. And so we are super excited to have her today. When I asked her about her career highlight, she said it was the D2 championships, where she had rain and sleet in her game, which I couldn't imagine a Florida girl surviving that. Tell me about that, Natalie.
Oh, it was incredible.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining.
Match, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining. I'm super excited about our conversation today and learning a little bit more about your story and your experiences. So thanks again for joining. So can you first, for sure. Can you first introduce yourself to the group who might not be familiar with you?
Yeah, I'm Natalie. I'm from Florida. Been in the college game for a few years. I started out as a player, played in college at Stetson in the Orlando area. And I was the player on the field that, most referees kind of knew about and, I'd always have an issue with. And my assistant coach at the time was actually Rodney Kenny, and he encouraged me to get into refereeing once I finished my career. And so that's how I kind of got started. I was that player that was an issue on the field, and refereeing was sort of a way to stay close to the game. And so when I first started working my college games, I would, run lines for referees that I remember from some of my games in college. And they would say, "Hey, I remember doing you played at Stetson, right?" So, I kind of was notorious as a player, but, refereeing was a nice transition from playing. So definitely had a fun college career, though.
I love it. Perfect. Well, we always say players make the best officials because you understand the game so well. So a perfect transition, undoubtedly. So let's dive right into the topic for today. So what does Black history mean to you?
Black history for me is kind of, it really is American history. Especially for me, it's very personal because I'm actually originally from Louisiana. So my family history, my family's been in this country for hundreds of years. And my great grandmother is a daughter of a Native American slave. On my dad's side, I think I'm 3 or 4 generations removed from that. So Black history is, I think, the foundation of our country. So for me, it's a huge thing. And I think all the different Black people that have contributed to things in our country that we sometimes don't always appreciate. I think it's a nice time that we get to actually highlight some of those people. And for me, it's very personal because it feels like my family history,
It's beautiful. I love that you just correlated it. It's American history. It's embedded in who we all are.
Really. It is.
I love that. That's a great perspective. So many people and organizations around the nation generally only celebrate Black history during the month of February and see it as a time to feature predominant Black historical icons and their contributions in the United States. What are your thoughts about this approach? And are there ways that the nation could do better in celebrating and honoring Black history?
Yeah, I think, February is a good time to do it, but I feel like Black history is something that should be celebrated year round. It's taught in schools and everybody has their own perspective about Black history, but I think it all starts with each individual person, going out there looking for information and educating themselves and being open and having dialogue. It's a good time to focus on Black icons right now and Black history, but I think all of us as Americans need to do our own homework and do our own due diligence throughout the year to make sure that we know the contributions of Black people. And I think it should happen throughout the year for sure.
I couldn't agree more. So, talking a little bit about Black history, what moment in Black history do you wish you could go back in history and witness, and why?
Oh man, a moment in Black history. Um, that's a hard question. Um, I would say, it's hard as a Black person to pick one moment, but I think for me, the civil rights era was a very, very hard time, but I would love to have just been there for one of Dr. King's speeches, or one of Malcolm X's speeches, like just to experience that and to be a part of that, even though it was a very hard time for Black people in this country. I think just to be able to witness that would just be incredible, for sure.
Hmm. The black and white videos just certainly don't do it justice,
I
do
know they
they?
don't. They don't.
Hmm. So tell us a little bit about your experience as a Black official. What's it like to be a Black official? What
Yeah.
challenges, if any, do you face because you are Black within this space? What positive experiences do you face, if any, because you're Black within the space? And who have contributed to those positive or challenging experiences?
You know, I'd say it's been a tough road. It's been up and down. I definitely have had a lot of highlights and good moments in my career. Um, but I think one of the first things I noticed when I first started refereeing and I was going to different events and meeting different mentors and assessors and people that had accomplished so much in the referee community, I quickly realized that no one looked like me. There's a lot of Black male referees that have done a lot at the MLS level and even FIFA level, and a lot of women that have accomplished a lot, at least white women, but there was nobody that looked like me. So it was really hard. And I had a lot of, at least internally, I had a lot of self-doubt about my abilities and what I could do and how far I could take myself in my career. So I think, over the years, as I've gotten more experience and I've gotten better at what I do on the field, it's constantly reminding myself that, I'm paving the way for someone else. And, it's a lot of pressure sometimes that I walk onto the field with, but I know that things are changing and moving in the right direction. But for me, it was really hard starting out as a referee and realizing that, I didn't really have someone to truly look up to that looked just like me that I could identify with. But, slowly things are changing and improving. But that was something that I noticed right off the bat.
I get goosebumps just listening to you tell that story. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's so important that people see people like themselves in
Yes.
roles, right? And the fact that you acknowledge that you're paving that for others, right? And while that role might not be there for you, there are so many women that are looking up to you and all that you've accomplished, right? So
Yes.
you're making those waves, and that is very much exciting. And literally, I have goosebumps.
But
um,
Tori, as a woman, like I think it's visibility is important. Like we've only seen a handful of us out there at the highest levels, So it's like, to have someone to relate to, you're paving the way as well for other referees that are coming up. I think visibility is the most important thing when you talk about, inspiring the younger generations and to kind of pave a way forward for everyone.
mhm. So, talking a little bit about Black History Month, for those that might not know, it was created in the second week of February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham on February 12th and Frederick Douglass on the 20th. Scholars acknowledge the importance of these men. Who are some of the icons who have inspired you that you've looked up to in your journey, and why?
Well, the big ones, the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X's. Me personally, I loved Muhammad Ali as a kid because he was just so cocky and just made me proud to be Black too. But a little more personal to me, I would have to say my grandfather. He, being from Louisiana, like a lot of things there at least changed very late. Like the country was moving forward, but a lot of things in the South, because of Jim Crow, took a lot longer to catch up to the rest of the country. So my grandfather's story is so incredible. He was actually growing up in the 40s. He was picking cotton at 9 years old, and they were only paying, he told me, a penny a pound. And I'm like, I don't even know how much a pound of cotton is, but I'm sure it's a lot, you know? And, you know, that's kind of, he started out doing that when he was a kid. So he worked his whole life, and he was really good at school. And in high school, the Louisiana governor passed a law that prevented teachers from writing recommendations for Black students to go to college, or else they would be risking their career. So my grandfather really wanted to go to college, and he wasn't able to when he graduated because of those laws that were passed in Louisiana. And they changed a few years after he had graduated. And my great grandmother encouraged him to go to college, even though he was working and making money and building a life for himself. He ended up going back to college and becoming a teacher and an administrator in the school board and everything. And you know, it's incredible that he was even able to accomplish that. But because of the Jim Crow laws, a lot of Blacks were deterred from being able to do that. So he's a hero for me, and I look up to him. And those stories of, you know, I'm going to keep passing those on to, you know, my family and the kids in our family. So his story is pretty incredible.
That's amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that very personal accolade that I think really colors the experiences of, you know, those before us. I think it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
The amount of work and dedication and motivation that's needed to kind of pass through those channels, I can't even fathom. You know, I'd seen an article a friend had posted recently, and it was a letter for acceptance or denial to a medical school. And it was
Yeah.
back in the 60s, so not too long ago. And literally in the letter, it said, you know, we apologize. We're not allowed to accept you despite your, you know, criteria because you are Negro. And it was like,
Yes.
sincerely, I don't know what else to tell you. Like that was it. And it was like, could
Yeah.
you imagine getting a letter like that and just not being able to do what you hope to do simply because of that? And it sounds like a really similar story. So good for him to
Yeah.
when that opportunity presented itself
Yeah.
to do it, you know?
It's really inspirational. It is.
That's amazing that you have that icon in front of you. That's great. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. Um, Similarly, but a little lighthearted,
Yeah.
if you could go to dinner with three Black icons, past, present, who would you pick?
Oh, my top choice would have to be Serena, even though she lost the other night.
Don't hold that against her.
I play tennis. I'm a big fan, and she's been an activist off the court. She's been just a powerhouse player, and um, she's definitely one of my favorite people. Just because she kind of broke down a lot of barriers, and just to watch her as a kid, to see what she was able to do, you know, on the court, it was just incredible. You know, Muhammad Ali is a big one, and Malcolm X, two of my biggest, just because of what they were able to do as well.
Wow, that is some personalities at one table,
That'd be a hell
including
of a dinner.
yourself. Be a hell of a dinner.
I just sit there and listen.
That's amazing. Important to note, Serena's also an NWSL owner.
That's right.
With
That's
the new
right.
LA team as well. So she's got that soccer blood in her too now.
I know. I
Pulled her to the
know.
dark side.
I'm excited to see what they do.
Very cool. I want to join that dinner, fly on the wall.
That's it.
So shifting gears a little bit, kind of, you know, I've got to throw some tough questions your way as well. You know, today is a super complex, challenging society that we have for a variety of different reasons, including the use of social media or the overuse of social media, right? For good, bad, and indifferent, right? It can be really challenging for officials to come together. However, sport is one of those things that really does unite us. When we get on that pitch, you know, we are all one, right? And we're playing a game. What advice do you give to officials who find themselves maybe in a locker room working with others that maybe don't necessarily look or think like them?
Yeah, you know, I kind of, you know, I look back to this past season, which was so different than any other season we've ever been through. And, you know, I constantly, you know, challenged myself throughout last year. I know a lot of people did, especially after, you know, George Floyd's murder. I think the conversation across the nation had changed dramatically, and these conversations were starting to be had in our locker rooms amongst officials too. You know, especially like my first MLS fourth official assignment. You remember that night, Tori,
Oh, I know it.
where you know the players ended up protesting the game, and it was going to be my first assignment, and it was just so ironic and so beautiful, and I had tears in my eyes, you know, and it was in that moment that I realized, I don't know if I should mention names, but the referee on the game and the other ARs in the game, like the moments we had in the locker room together, I'll have with me for the rest of my life, because at that moment, it was bigger than football. It was bigger than the game. It was bigger than anything else going on. And it was just one of the most beautiful memories of my career. But it all started in that locker room. And I think we're going to have more moments like that. But it brought me, like, I would go to war for everybody that, I was in the locker room with that night. And it was just so incredible because we did have some of those conversations that I think we're all going to start having over the next few years because of what's happened.
And you kind of mentioned it earlier, right? It's about having that dialogue. It's having
Yes.
these conversations. And I think that you're one of those people that is willing and open and, lovingly having these conversations so that we can all be enlightened. I remember
Absolutely.
that night. And for those that might not
Yes.
know, um, there were several teams and rumors about MLS games not proceeding in protest.
Mhm.
And I happened to have a game the same night as Natalie. My game was the first game of the series, and the teams hadn't yet gotten everything sorted out
Yes.
just yet. But we were supposed to have our first fourth officials the same night. And then Natalie's game and the subsequent games thereafter didn't kick off in protest of what had been happening around. And it was certainly a moment that I celebrated for you
Yeah.
and for the league because it really was something special and a very challenging time for everyone. And
Yes.
I'm really glad to hear that experience is going to stick with you for a long time because
I was honored
officials,
to be a part of it.
yeah, we can support each other too, right? And in those
Yes.
moments of tough times when we don't know what's the right decision or how to, supporting each other is one of the biggest things we can do. And um, that's beautiful. I love that story. Um, Shifting a little bit to decision makers on the pitch, if you had the opportunity to speak directly to decision makers, what advice would you have for them in regards to ensuring or creating opportunities for Black and minority officials?
You know, I would say the most important thing, just in the conversations I've had with other Black referees, especially in the last year, I think one of the biggest things that we want is, just an opportunity. The experience that you get on the field is, it's all anybody ever wants. And I think, when you look at, I think everybody has to take an honest look at your roster, who you're assigning to games. Maybe we don't have all the data right now, but I think we will. But I think everyone needs to take an honest look at their roster and how they're assigning different officials, because I think in order to see more Black referees on the field and doing higher level games, working in the Power Five conferences, I think you have to give people the opportunity to get those quality games and quality experiences to get better. That's the only way you can improve and get to this level, is to get those games that challenge you, get those games that push you, and give you the experience you need to improve.
Absolutely. Experience is everything in this game. What suggested changes would you make to improve the experiences and outcomes of Black officials?
It's kind of tied into my last answer. I would say just a little more transparency and assigning. I think we're starting to take a closer look at the mix of referees at least at the pro level, U.S. soccer level. Trying to get data on how diverse is our referee pool. How many women are being used on certain games. I think getting more data and getting more transparency in how we assign these games will make it fair for everybody. I think everybody just wants a fair shot at the end of the day. I don't want to be, assigned to a game just because I'm a woman or just because I'm Black. I want to be assigned because I'm good, right? I think that's how all of us feel about it. So I think just, having honest look and getting more transparency in how we assign these games and, making sure that people are giving a fair shot.
Yeah. And one thing I'd add there, just from a NISOA perspective,
Mm-hmm.
that we are having those tough conversations ourselves. And we've worked with the RIDE committee to help take a look at our membership and our profile. And we've compared it directly with NCAA athletes and how we compare across demographics, race being one of them, gender being another. You can imagine the gender gap. Thanks
Absolutely.
to Title IX, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 60+% female athletes, right? where
Yeah.
we're trailing at about 6%, 7% membership females for officials. So a huge disparity and gap there. We see a little less on the race side, but there certainly still is gaps in compared to the normalized data. So we're taking a look at the data and we're
Awesome.
finding ways to be more inclusive, include more officials. And this initiative is one of those, to highlight members like you who have been successful, who have found success in the game. And I know you're ambitious and you have big aspirations, and there's a lot more that you want to do. And hopefully the college game is going to help you get there. But undoubtedly, I think that is a message that is heard and we're responding to, at least from our perspective,
Awesome.
for sure. What advice would you have to aspiring Black officials?
I would say for me, in my experience, there were different challenges that everybody's going to have along the way. But I think, finding, other friends, other referees that you can connect with and relate to and share some of your experiences with, always having somebody you can call and talk things out, like things that happen in matches, having somebody you can get on the phone with and say, hey, did I do this right? Hey, what do you think? And finding someone that can mentor you a little bit, but always staying positive and not getting discouraged. Sometimes it's easy to get frustrated that you're not getting the games that you want. You're not being recognized for the things that you've accomplished, but staying positive, keep pushing forward and finding people that, can help you get better.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice for everyone. When we talk about Black History Month, it's not just about celebrating the progress and the history, but also looking forward and what's ahead. What does your ideal future look like?
I would say my ideal future looks like, more diversity, not only on the pitch, but also like in the administration and leadership roles. I'd want to see, more women, more blacks, more minorities, sitting on the boards, having a seat at the table. Because I think that's where a lot of change and a lot of, influence can be had. So I would say, more, you know, more administrative changes as far as diversity would be something that would be great for everybody.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Having a voice at a table is the start of change.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us regarding your take on Black history or the experiences of Black officials that we haven't covered?
No, I think we covered a lot, Tori. I just want to thank you. I want to thank NYSOA for even putting this on. I think you guys have shown like incredible leadership out of all the other referee organizations. Like you guys are the first to do something like this. And I know it's been a long road for us to get here, but I really do appreciate it. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I think you guys are like moving in the right direction and you guys are, leading the way on this. And I really do appreciate that. I know a lot of referees do as well.
Thanks, Natalie. That means a lot. That's why we're doing this, right? Is to give a voice and close that gap in understanding of one another. And thank you for taking the time to share a very personal journey. And I learned a lot about you.
Yeah.
Your grandfather's story was really touching. I think, you've encouraged others. You are paving a path for many. You are an inspiration to so many. You've accomplished so much in your career in such a short bit of time. And I know you will accomplish great things in the future because you have that grit, you have that determination. And we talk about, athleticism and the skill set required. You've got it all, girl. And I'm so excited to see what the future holds for you. But thank you again for sharing your stories with us. I know it takes courage to be a little vulnerable in this situation. And I appreciate tremendously for you doing that and having the courage to come out here and share those stories, and helping us better understand what your experience has been like. So thank you, Natalie, and look forward
Thank
to
you for
seeing you on
having me,
the field
Tori.
soon. Yeah. Take care.
All right, you too.